This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at MB.
Let's face it, life after service ain't always easy. Far too many veterans continue to struggle in silence. But you don't have to fight this battle alone, because we are here to help. This ain't no group therapy. It's the after party to the battle. Full speed ahead, after battle. Real thoughts, real stories, no BS.
Good Monday, shipmates. It is September 22nd, and we are here again with Full Speed Ahead After Battle. As always, I am your host, Josh McCabe. Today is Monday, September 22nd, and what does that mean for all of my brothers and sisters out there? That means today is Battle Buddy Check Day. All right, this is the day. They call it a day. It should be every day, right? Today is the day that you need to call in, text in, write in, do whatever you want to do, Snapchat in, talk to all your people, make sure they're still hanging in there, okay? I got a message this morning from a fellow VFW comrade checking on me and my family, wanting to make sure we're doing good. And I tell you what, with everything going on lately, that was a blessing for me, because it's been a rough time lately, and I hardly know this guy, but he still took the time to check in and see how I'm doing, see if there's anything I needed. Not only that, but my family as well. And so I carried that forward. I checked on a couple of other people. I put some posts out there on social media, calling for everybody to check in on everybody, okay? Because if we don't know it, the other reason for Battle Buddy Check Day today on the 22nd is because, if you don't already know this, 22 veterans commit suicide every single day. That means within the span of this 1 hour show, it is more than likely that one veteran will commit suicide during this show. I'm here to try and stop that 22. I'm here to try to end veteran suicide, but I can't do it alone. I've got to have everybody's help. There are so many different groups out there right now, whether it's Army, Marines, Navy, VFW, American Legion. Everybody that's out there is putting on this same battle, but it's still going on. So the more we talk about this, the more we have shows like this, the more groups out there about this, talking about this, hopefully it stops before too long. But until then, I'm going to keep carrying on the show. I'm going to have so many guests on here that we're going to talk about everything from that transition from the service to the civilian life, because that's probably the number one indicator in veteran suicide is that transition. It's hard to go from a life of service and knowing what to do all day, every day, being told what to do all day, every day, into a life where it's all about you. You're making your decisions. You're able to call in sick to work if you want to call in sick to work. You can decide what you want to wear. And I know that sounds funny, but for veterans that come from a life of what we do, coming into that and having all those choices, it's hard and it's not easy to do. And so that's what I'm here for, that transition. We're going to talk about suicide awareness. A lot of people still think there's a stigma around there because they don't want to talk about that, right? We get labeled with suicide like I thought about it, or maybe I contemplated it, or I tried it, or let's not even talk about it because that's a touchy situation, right? People don't want to talk about it, along with the mental health awareness. We're getting better as a society, as veteran groups. We're getting better about it, especially in this new age of veterans coming through. They are talking about it. They are getting that word out there. And hopefully, with all of that help, it works. So not only am I doing the show, but I figured today on September 22nd, Battle Buddy Check Day, was a good time to announce this event that I have been working on. So if you're not already aware, I am a member of the VFW here in North Texas, District 21. I'm the Suicide Awareness Chair for District 21. I have put together an event that is going to be hosted at the end of April 2026. That's next year, the last Saturday of that April. And it is the Battle Buddy Throwdown. It is the cornhole tournament for the winning team is going to get the Commander's Cup. You're going to get bragging rights. You're going to get prizes. And all of this money raised is going to go towards suicide awareness and mental health awareness. All these proceeds are going to go to a good group. Some guys that I know that I've been involved with lately, the Irreverent Warriors. So we're going to raise funds. We're going to raise money. We'll start pushing that out at the beginning of the year, but I just want to get that out there, get that on everybody's calendars. The Battle Buddy Throwdown, sponsored by District 21. It's going to be hosted at Post 8235 here in North Texas. They are central to our location, to the District 21 location. So that's why we're going to have it there. So without further ado, I've got a guest on today, and I know that this is a show about veterans. She's not a veteran herself. However, Coast Guards aren't veterans either, right? So why not have a bunch of other people on? I'm kidding. You Coast Guard guys, y'all definitely put in the fight when it comes to storms and drug interdictions, all kinds of things. That's part of this show, right? The fun, the camaraderie. Let's joke back and forth, have a good time. Anyway, Maddie Andrews, she has been dealing with mental illness her entire life to a point where it almost consumed her life, and she almost did not make it out alive. And she has turned that into a success story. She's created a support group. She's working on her master's in social work, and she is the civilian partner of a visitor we had a couple weeks ago, Rita Honeycutt. So Rita was the veteran part of the group that she's in. Maddie is the civilian side. So we'll get a little bit more into that. But ready or not, here we are for our interview of the week.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
All right, Maddie, welcome to Full Speed Ahead. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Good. I'm glad you're here. You have an amazing story to share, and I'm glad that I have you on the show today. So why don't we start with you kind of introducing yourself to the viewers and telling them who you are.
My name is Maddie, and I want to first start off by saying thank you to all of you for your service. I don't have the words to thank you enough. Today, I am a peer support specialist. I am a master's in social work student. I am a nonprofit founder. I also work full-time. In a past life, I was a teacher, but I think my most important mission is being a mental health advocate. I do live with serious mental illness. I have my entire life, and that's why I help other people.
That's great. I know we're going to get more into the story, but thank you again, Maddie, for coming on to the show. So I actually booked you on the show first, and they're like, hey, I know this lady. She's the veteran counterpart, Rita Honeycutt, and she was on the show a couple of weeks ago. So how do you two fit together? How do y'all know each other?
Rita is fabulous. We both sit on our local mental health collaborative board in our area. And she was planning a suicide prevention summit. And I said, hey, Adam, I'd like to speak as well. And we got to know each other through working together on the collaborative and at the event. And now we're planning future events together, and she's a fabulous resource in the community.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm sure, between you on the civilian side and her on the veteran side, y'all got the whole collective together. So I know y'all are out there reaching all kinds of people, putting out the good information and definitely some good stuff. So, all right. Well, let me ask you today, since today is the 22nd Battle Check Day, how are you doing today, Maddie? Like, how are you physically, mentally, emotionally doing today?
I am good. I am tired. It is my bedtime, to be really honest. Mentally, I'm great. I had therapy today, so that was a plus. So thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Again, I'm tired as well. Had a head injury back in June, so I've just been kind of dealing with some stuff like that. Finally saw a neurologist on Friday, got some other medication to kind of help out with that. So we're slowly getting there. It's a lot of pain for a lot of months, but I'm getting better. I'm doing better. Thank you.
Progress over
So
perfection, right?
I know it's not a sprint, right? Mental health is a marathon. It's not something that you're going to accomplish overnight. It's going to take work. It takes dedication. It takes a whole village to get this done, right? Can't do it on your own. So why don't we? So I read over your story, and I am amazed that you are still here. One, so thank you for still being here. Two, I have to give your husband some thanks, because I'm sure he's just like my wife. If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be here still doing what I'm doing. And so it's definitely that support system that carries us through, because without that support system and we're on our own, 100% of the time, we're probably not going to be here, right? So let's take you back. You started at a young age with your mental illness. Let's just go ahead and say that, mental illness. So let's get into that.
So when I was 4, before I was 4, it was pretty, whatever, typical. You want to say typical. When I was 4, I had a super traumatic experience happen to me, and I actually developed PTSD at 4 years old. But my parents were unaware. And then in middle school, I started developing serious mental illness. Not to say PTSD isn't serious, but this is just labeled that way.
Right.
I was developing schizophrenia and bipolar symptoms. So I had psychosis, mania, depression. But I didn't tell anybody, because when you're in middle school, you think everybody's the same. I guess everybody else hears voices. Everybody else gets moody. Everybody else. So I didn't say anything until I was 19 years old. And at that point, the only reason I said anything at all is because I wanted to end my life. I knew I felt bad. I knew something was wrong. At that point in my life, I had been forced to drop out of college. And I said, what do I have left for me? And my mom took me to a hospital, and they diagnosed me at that time with bipolar 1 disorder. And the first thing they did was meds. When I was in the hospital, I was there for a week, and these symptoms for these antipsychotic medications are pretty intense. I couldn't put my pants on a week after being in the hospital because of the weight balloon. Suddenly I couldn't see. I started losing my hair. All of these exacerbated symptoms, but it wasn't fixing the problem. So I spent my 20s really going through the motions, hospitalization after hospitalization. I ended up in drug treatment one time when I was 21. I was living in what I call survival mode. So I worked. I ended up getting back in school, but I put everything into my job, and that was my sole coping skill. So when I got home, I had nothing left to give and nothing to rely on. So I would work, come home, and fall to pieces. And then in 2022, I was so suicidal that I decided that it was my life or the job, and I resigned. And initially I felt relief. Okay, the weight is off my shoulders. I can live again. But the problem was that was my sole coping skill. So I woke up the next day and I said, okay, Now I have no identity. What am I? And I made the plan and I wrote the note and I took action. My husband did intervene and it was a dark time. And I ended up getting another job and I was so psychotic at the time that I really wasn't talking to people because when you live with psychosis, you can hear voices, you can see things, you may have delusions and paranoia. So it's very difficult to exist in the world. My diagnosis now and at that time is what's called schizoaffective bipolar type, which means I live with symptoms of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And in 2023, I was still going through the motions, and my doctor called. At this point, I was on 10 to 15 mental health meds at a pretty high level. And she said, there's a new drug. And I was like, whatever, what's one more? But the difference was this drug doesn't block all my dopamine. So I started processing emotions. So in 2019, my mom died by suicide, but I couldn't cry. I was so numb. And all of a sudden, I was crying, I was laughing, I was angry, I was happy, and I began to feel motivated. I started doing more around the house, and I did so well. And my doctor said, okay, let's reduce some of these other medications. But for me, you have to treat mania, depression, and psychosis. Well, she took me off my mania medication, and I got really sick. So sick that I had to go out of work, and my husband had to go out of work, and he had to take care of me full time. And when I wasn't getting better, they upped a medication called lithium, which is a heavy metal used to treat bipolar disorder, which is a good drug. It was effective for me for 20 years. But the problem was she gave me too much and didn't obtain blood work, and I went toxic, but nobody knew. So quickly, I couldn't walk, talk, use a cell phone. I was in diapers. I couldn't swallow, and nobody knew what was going on. And one day, about 2 or 3 weeks after living like this, I got enough strength to try to utter the words, take me to the hospital. And my husband took me to the mental hospital and they said, whoa, this is out of our scope. There is something bigger going on here. And they rushed me to the ER. And I was really only seeing life in the form of hallucinations at this time. But I do recall them looking me in my face because I wasn't being compliant. And they said, if you do not comply, you are going to die. I was dying from the lithium. And the first course of action was fluids. That's what you do when you have poison, when you're poisoned. So they were flushing this mass amounts of fluids into me. But when you're getting fluid after fluid after fluid, your heart will enlarge. And my heart, it did enlarge and it started to fail. And when your heart's enlarged and failing and they continue the fluids, it pumps into your lungs. So the bottom half of both of my lungs collapsed, but the lithium wasn't gone. So I ended up with 2 rounds of dialysis to clear my system. But the problem now was I wasn't responsive still. So they did an EEG, which showed very little brain activity. And they were discussing a diagnosis called silent syndrome, which means I would get worse and never recover. My husband was grieving. My family was grieving. I was out of it until the last day of the ICU. I was there for 2 weeks, and they were getting ready to transfer me to the mental hospital because they had done all they could do there. And I woke up. And I thought I was on a spaceship, and I had no short-term memory, and I have amnesia. So I had no idea what had happened to me. I tried to walk. I tried to talk. I tried to eat. I wasn't eating. I tried to do all these things, and this is where my recovery journey really began.
Wow, that I can't believe that you started at such a young age with all of that and that you're still here after all of that. And I will say that story, I know it sounds a lot. There are a lot of veterans going through the same thing with the VA. The VA is putting them on medication after medication after pill after pill, and it's not at some point it doesn't help them. It destroys the body more than it helps them. And to the point that there are veterans going to the VA saying, I'm having all these issues. I'm going to commit suicide if you don't help me. And they say, no, you're not messed up enough. And then they commit suicide right there in the waiting room. So I'm glad that you found an avenue that they actually helped you out. I'll say I'm not a big fan of the VA. I would rather spend my money to go to private doctors or private whatever and seek help elsewhere, just because I literally had a doctor this morning say, I don't know why they put you on this medication because that's for something else that you don't have. And here we are. That's the VA telling you that. So it's amazing that, with all the medication and everything you've experienced, that you're still here. I'm happy that you're still here. You have such a huge story to tell a lot of people. And for those people that are listening and just listen to Maddie's story, the next time you think I can't go to work because I have a headache, rethink that story, because you absolutely can't go to work. And I don't want to hear that excuse anymore, right? A lot of us have that. So I tell you what, that's a lot to digest. So let's take a quick break real quick. We're going to bring up a quick show, and we'll let y'all digest that. And when we come back, we're going to start we're going to talk about that support system that Maddie had a little bit more that got her through things. All right. We'll be right back after a few moments.
I'm about as far as I'm going. Welcome home. I'm sure your family and all your friends are going to be glad to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Walking these old dirt road side streets, looking at the sights and reminiscing, wondering what's changed since I've been gone. I'm coming home. It's like yesterday that I left here. Time flies and now it's been years, but I know this is where I belong.
Hey, girl, boss.
I'm coming home. Coming home to the family, the friends and the memories, the ones I love and the ones I regret. Coming back to make a new life, built on the one I left behind. Thank God it wasn't over yet. We're not made to live this life alone, so I'm coming home. Fear almost stopped me from returning. Thought others won't forgive the bridges burning, but I'm planning to rebuild what is gone now that I'm home. And I know it won't be the same that it was, but that's okay, 'cause I will always love this place and the ones who call it home. Yeah, that's my home. Coming home to the family, friends and the memories, the ones I love and the ones I regret. Coming back to make a new life, built on the one I left behind. Life alone, so I'm coming home. We're not made to live this life alone, so I'm coming home.
The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for supporting our channel by watching and listening.
Find us on the web at mbradio.net.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just now tuning in, I am your host, Josh McCabe, on the Full Speed Ahead After Battle show. Today, we have our special guest, Maddie Andrews. We just listened to her amazing story of living with mental illness and all that entails since she was a young child. Before we get back into it, let me just remind you that you can follow this show and all the MBR shows on all the links above this page. You can follow me on my Full Speed Ahead page. You can follow me on Instagram, Josh McCabe 817. You can also find the show afterwards. I'll have it on YouTube, Podbean, and Spotify under the MBR Talk Rewind. So let's get back into the story with Maddie. Maddie, welcome back. So let's talk. I mentioned this earlier. Your husband, my wife, support systems you have to have them, right? How important was that support system to you?
I would not be the person I am today without a community. You know, my husband didn't know what was happening to me. He was not educated in mental health, and it almost broke our marriage. But we stuck by each other and we educated ourselves. But it wasn't, just him. I have his family. I have my friends. I had my job. And I was vocal about what was happening with me. When I was younger, I was not. And I didn't lean on a support system. And it really backfired for me. So the most important part of my recovery today is having a community of supportive people.
Absolutely. I think, support is 100% the thing to have. And even though we talk about whether it's veterans or civilian suicide or mental health awareness, it's not just those individuals that need to educate themselves on the signs or the things that to look out for, but it's their family, their friends. Businesses need to be on the lookout for those, co-workers. I think, I don't want to make light of mental illness at all, but it is becoming more and more prevalent in today's society. Everybody is going to doctors more. Everybody's getting diagnosed with whatever it may be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that with diagnosing all this, we need to have all that education out there, and that education can come in forms of, don't Google it, because you're going to go down the rabbit hole trying to Google stuff. You're going to self-diagnose, and that's always a bad thing. But you can also find education in support groups. There's a lot of different support groups out there. And Maddie, you created your own support group along with Rita, right? JNE. So why don't you tell us about that?
Right. So I created J&E support group. Rita is a great community partner through Veteran Services for that. J&E support group is a nonprofit, and one of our initiatives is free, 100% free community support. I'm a big believer that mental health care needs to be equitable, accessible, and affordable. So we offer 3 support groups to our community. One is virtual. Our virtual support group is for anyone living with or affected by schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. Our 2 in-person groups are in Randolph County, and they offer mental health umbrella groups, anyone living with or affected by any type of mental health need. And that while they are not therapy, they are a safe, confidential place to find a community of like-minded people where you can learn and grow together and lean on each other in hard times.
Wow, that sounds like a great group. So is that just online, or is that in person, or?
Our online group is for the schizoaffective schizophrenia bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And we have 2 in-person groups, one in Asheboro, North Carolina, and one in Liberty, North Carolina, that are for any mental health diagnosis at all. And we've even had participants who maybe don't have a mental health diagnosis. They just want to find community, and we welcome that as well.
Okay. And so you're not just somebody that kind of threw together a support group and said, hey, people, let's do this, right? You actually went to school, you got a degree, you're still going to school for a master's. So you're all in on this. You're full speed ahead on J&E, right?
I am. So I've been a participant in quite a few support groups myself for my own mental illness. And, schizoaffective is not discussed a lot. That's my diagnosis. And I didn't want anybody else to feel the way I felt. I felt very alone for most of my life because I didn't know a single soul like me. So that was the initial idea with J&E, was to create a group for people like me. But when it did well and I was able to create that community and I saw how helpful it was, I said, why can't I recreate this in person for other groups of people in my community? And I am in school getting my master's in social work. The original idea with that was grant-based therapy, because all my services with J&E are 100% free. And I wanted to do that with therapy as well. But I've learned along the way is that my experiences and my voice is going to be very beneficial in the field of advocacy and possibly policy change, being a voice for people who don't quite have a voice yet or don't know where to share their voice.
Okay. So let's go back to advocacy real quick, because as a member of the VFW, we advocate a lot for veterans, right? And a lot of what is going on right now, especially in Texas, is alternative medicine. And when I say alternative medicine, we're talking about different THC products. So what sort of advocacy are you working on as far as mental health or any of the J&E support?
I think the biggest thing I'm doing at this point is opening the conversation. I do live with significant mental health needs, but if you saw me in the community, you would never know. And I am transparent. I am very open, and I do it so that people can break down those stereotypes. Rita and I are working together to create a community event. It's a mental health simulation. So you'll come and you'll be given a portfolio. Rita's writing the veteran portfolio. I'm writing the schizophrenia portfolio. We have other community partners as well. So you'll be given like a history, a diagnosis, do you have insurance, the whole 9 yards. And there's tables set up around the room. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's the VA, maybe it's a doctor. And you have to navigate life living with that mental illness. And we're doing it to break down stereotypes and break down barriers. And then we're going to follow up with trainings such as Rita with mental health first aid so that we can educate our community. Our community is a mental health desert. We do not have a lot of providers, and we have a very high level of stigma. So we're hopeful if we can break down some of the stigma, we can invite providers to the area as well as invite people to use these resources. Stigma prevents a lot of people from getting the help they need.
It absolutely does. And, that's one of the biggest things I continue to fight as far as, when I got out, I tried to go to college. I got an associate's degree. The hardest thing I ever did was 8 years Navy, then going back to school with a bunch of high school kids.
Right.
And also trying to join the workforce as somebody that's been out there and seen a lot of things. That stigma that all veterans are hard charging, all veterans have PTSD, all veterans are not very friendly and grumpy. Well, some of us, yes, we are grumpy, we have PTSD, but that doesn't define us. We still wake up every day. I think, the ways I try to break that stigma is, like you said, have those open conversations. And, I created a veterans group at work, a business resource group. And we have a lot of discussions around those stigmas and what can our business do to kind of help our veterans with those different issues. But also, how can we, with these disabilities, support the business? Because, we see things differently that maybe the business never saw it, and we can help you out in a different way, whether it's leadership or some of the other skills. So let me kind of backtrack a little bit, because I kind of went off track there, but you said you have Sorry, what was it?
It's called schizoaffective bipolar type. It means I live with symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And I also have PTSD and generalized anxiety along with that.
Okay, so let's try and break down that stigma then. What is the schizo and the bipolar? How does that affect Maddie?
When I am very stressed or unmedicated, I can have psychosis, mania, or depression. And what psychosis looks like for me is different for everybody, right? But for me, I have auditory hallucinations. So I hear things that aren't real. I might see things that aren't real. And for me personally, those things are very scary and anxiety provoking. And mania means that I'm very elevated. I might talk fast. I might not sleep. I might not eat. And somebody in mania might feel happy, excited about this, but it's very dangerous because your impulse control when you're manic is slim to none. So people make very rash decisions, such as spending their life savings, having an affair on their partner of 30 years, things they would not normally do because that impulse control is just not working in their brain. And then depression, your very low lows. That's when we see a lot of suicidal ideations and self-harming.
Right.
And they all interplay with me. So when I'm stressed today, I'm in recovery. So my symptoms don't happen every day, but recovery is not a linear process, right? And stress is a trigger for me. No sleep is a trigger for me. And I'm a very busy person with a lot of stress and very little sleep. So sometimes I might get triggered with that psychosis. And for me today, what that looks like is I might have a paranoid thought or a delusion. So I may think the world is out to get me, or a group of people hate me, or I'm a bad person, or I'm being stalked, or my phone is tapped, things that are out of the norm. But I have to preface all this by saying, just because someone is in psychosis does not mean they're a dangerous person. I've never harmed anybody. I know a lot of times in the media, people hear words like schizophrenia and they're afraid of those people. It's a very taboo word. The people living with schizophrenia are more likely to harm themselves than anyone else.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because it's kind of similar with the PTSD and veterans and everything. It's, we're more worried about ourselves than the other people, right? I'm here to protect me and my family. So, when I go to right now with everything going on, my wife won't let me go to the grocery store because I'm sitting there watching every single person around me. What do they have? In today's age, you don't know who has what and is going to do what. So, similar to what you said, you're always thinking people are out to get you. When they tell veterans, we're hyper vigilant. And that's their nice word of putting it on. I'm worried about everybody else out there. And so, it takes me back to some training that they have at different jobs. And when it comes to like active shooter or things like that, they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do in this situation. We're going to run, we're going to hide. And then if we have to, we'll try and fight. I'm sorry. That's not the way my brain is going to work. I'm fighting. Then I'm not going to do anything because either it's over or I'm not going to be here to worry about it anymore. So, it sounds, I don't want to downplay it at all, but, a lot of what you have, it sounds like similar to a lot of veterans. They just put different words on it. And maybe that's something I need to look more into, or maybe, I need to better educate myself because, it's just a lot of different names for the same thing. So if you're going out to a business, and what would you tell businesses or companies that have employees that are dealing with these kinds of things to break that stigma? What would you tell them? Either, hey, look out for these signs, or how can you best help them so that they are a valuable employee?
I encourage all agencies to get mental health first aid training. I think getting the educated training is very important. And my piece of that is educating them. You probably have more people living or working there with mental illness than you know. Because of stigma, most people closet this information. I did for many years, and it was detrimental to my mental health to do so. So when somebody feels safe enough to come to you and disclose this information, meet them with kindness. Do not judge them, because that's a brave thing to do. And, I'm a good employee. I work very hard. It just so happens that I might need accommodations here and there. So if you have a good employee, why wouldn't you accommodate them when they're asking for something so small just to make their day more productive? I think it's all about meeting people with kindness and no judgment.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with the kindness and judgment. And, I was recently talking to a group of veterans, and I was telling them about my plans for the suicide awareness as far as our district here in North Texas. And one guy pulled me aside. He's a Vietnam veteran. And he said, I've been around the VFW. He's talking from him. He's been around the VFW for a long time. And I am the first one that is kind of stepped up in this area and said, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to actually put work in instead of putting that name, that tag behind my name. And so he shared a story with me that he has never told any other VFW member, in that after Vietnam, he did try to commit suicide. He shot himself in the chest. It barely missed his heart, and he's still here, and he's never thought about it afterwards. But like you just said, when you're free enough or open enough to have that conversation, and you're not shying away from the stigma of, ooh, we're not going to talk about suicide, we're not going to talk about mental health, people will open up to you and come forward and talk with you. And, that's the good thing about J&E support group. That's the good thing about all the other support groups, is there's people there that will talk to you and won't judge you. And even, the youngest guy or the oldest guy, that's been through the stuff, they'll open up. And so that's kind of the conversations that we need to have more often, so that those people feel, more vulnerable, more willing to open up. So yes, I think that's great advice to the employee. I experienced that in my same job. It's, there's a lot of people doing great work. You can bend a little bit to help them out, right, to keep the business going. So it's not that hard. Cover it under the insurance, or, maybe bring somebody in and do a lunch and learn, right, on mental health or something. So, all right, we're going to take another quick break. I've got to go get a refill of my water. I'm thirsty today, but we'll be right back after these quick messages. Okay.
All righty.
Still see the spray painted stop sign when I roll down 79. The drag marks behind that mini mart ain't faded after all this time. Every man died from Georgia to California's got a boy with a rebel heart. Stories in every small town scar that by a good old boy taking it way too far. Somebody had to drink too much and crank Hank way too loud. Somebody had to always stand up to the guy with a tendency to run his mouth. The straight pipe Chevy had to run these streets like Bo and Luke in the General Lee. Yeah, somebody had to, and that somebody was me. There's still ruts on Ridge Hill Road, and muddy cans we tossed out the window. String bikini on a limb by a swimming hole. That's a story that'll never be told. Cigarette butts in a busted bottle sitting by that old burn pile. This town was nothing without us, tearing it up every once in a while. Somebody had to drink too much and crank Hank way too loud. Somebody had to always stand up to the guy with a tendency to run his mouth. The straight pipe Chevy had to run these streets like Bo and Luke in the General Lee. Yeah, somebody had to, and that somebody was me. I guess somebody had to get a 4.0 full ride, whole life planned out on track. Somebody had to make a touchdown pass when state front page ain't written in black. But somebody had to drink too much and crank Hank way too loud. Somebody had to always stand up to the guy with a tendency to run his mouth. The straight pipe Chevy had to run these streets like Bo and Luke in the General Lee. Yeah, somebody had to.
The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for supporting our channel by watching and listening.
Find us on the web at mbradio.net.
All right, welcome back to Full Speed Ahead After Battle. I am your host again, Josh McCabe. Again, it's September 22nd. I haven't seen y'all checking in yet on the comments, so go down below, check in, make sure your battle buddies, your friends, your family, your loved ones, make sure everybody's okay. Don't just say, "Are you okay?" and leave it at that. Ask them, seriously, "Are you okay?" Because you never know when it's too late. So with that, we mentioned family. I'm going to bring Maddie back on. Maddie, welcome back. Let's go back to kind of the support group, right? Let's talk about people dealing with mental illness and their families and how things like that go. And I'll preface it with this, both of my parents were veterans as well. My mom only did a couple years before she got out and had gave birth to a legend. I'm just saying, maybe me. I'm the favorite of the family. I'll tell everybody that right now, and it's not a joke. I really am. However, on the flip side, my dad had served about 30 years in the military before he retired. We talk a lot. However, we come from that old school family of we don't talk about feelings. We just kind of push them down and see, don't talk about that. However, recently, as he's retired, I've tried to open up a little bit more with him because I feel like he kind of goes through the same things. And not only that, but his brother, who was also a veteran in the Navy, actually committed suicide about a year or so ago on right after Thanksgiving. And so a lot of veterans in my family don't talk about feelings. Something happens, comes out of nowhere. So, Maddie, let's talk about you and your mom. Y'all had a relationship, and I'll leave it at that. And tell us about that.
My parents, I have to preface, best parents, super supportive, great people. Everybody has their flaws. They did open the conversation when I did reach out for help. They tried their best. They did a really good job of getting me services. But when it came to my mom's own mental health, that was the struggle. I have lost two family members to suicide, one being my mom. She was physically and mentally unwell, and I had a baseline of understanding. When my father passed in 2012, I was kind of her caretaker. So I understood, but I wish we had opened that conversation more about resources for her. Like, I was trying my best, but I didn't know what to do, and she wasn't receptive to allowing me to talk to her doctors. So she ended up taking her own life, and I beat myself up for a really long time. What could I have done differently? And when she died, I felt like I couldn't be angry. I couldn't be sad because she wasn't in pain. That was what I kept telling myself. But really, when someone dies by suicide, it's really painful for you too. And it took me 6 years to process that. It took me 6 years to say, oh my gosh, I'm mad at her. I'm sad. Like, I have these extravagant emotions about this, and it hit me all of a sudden. So I wish that the conversation was opened. And what we do with J&E support group is we try to open those conversations. When we have group members, we invite their families. Let's help you facilitate these conversations about what's going on with you. Let's facilitate talking about our feelings, because like you, a lot of people are not raised to talk about feelings. My husband, for one, it was not a family with his father where they could openly discuss that type of thing. And he processed his feelings and it was anger. Everything he felt came out as anger. And we had to work together to really learn, okay, you're not really angry, you're anxious or you're sad. And this is how we can process that together.
Yeah, absolutely. And my mom, she actually reached out to me this morning. She went and saw the doctor with some things, and they're getting her into a counselor, because I know, getting an age, she just lost her father. She just lost her aunt, who was like a mother to her. She lost her mother a few years ago, and obviously people, they fall into that depression now that, your maternal, your fraternal, everybody's gone. And it's a struggle for them. So I check in with her, and I do have that conversation. We'll check on each other's health and mental health, and we're okay with that. And I'm glad because, I can say, Mom, are you okay? Right. And she's going to be honest with me. And so let me ask you a question. And I know it's kind of different for everybody. When your mom was going through this before she committed suicide, was she a happy person? Did everybody's she's joking around, she's friendly, she's no care in the world? Or did she act like she was down and depressed? Because I know there's a difference, and people need to be aware of that too, that sometimes it's the happiest go lucky people that are struggling the most.
That is very true. When I tried to commit suicide, nobody knew that I was having those feelings. It was a shock when I opened up about that because I put on that facade in public. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, check on your happy friends too. But my mom had a lot of physical ailments. She had just had her, 12, 13, 14 spinal fusion. She had arthritis all over her body. She was mentally unwell, and the doctors were giving her copious amounts of narcotics to deal with this. So she had a lot going against her, and I knew she was in pain. I knew she was suffering. I didn't know she would take it that far. She had just gotten out of surgery and was staying in an assisted living to recover. And I thought she was safe, and she wasn't. And so it was a huge shock. And the way they called me and told me was terrible. It was an awful situation. And so don't ever assume anything about anyone, I guess is the main point there.
Yeah. And, going back to my uncle's story, he's always hardworking, right? He grew up in an era where his dad was in the Navy, retired from the Navy. They grew up in that strict military Catholic, Irish Catholic family where you did not talk about feelings whatsoever at all. Hardworking, had 3 sons, had a bunch of grandkids. He loved everybody, always took care of his wife, always took care of the kids, always happy, always willing to help everybody else, always willing to go out of his way to do anything for anybody else. They had Thanksgiving. They even went out and I think played golf, him and the kids and my dad. And a couple days later, they found him next to the pond with a shotgun. And, he shot himself in the chest. And that's why I say it's not always those people that look depressed, right? It's the happiness that I think we need to check on the most because they're trying to cover up that pain that's inside of them, trying to make everybody else happy. I don't know if this is why, but maybe because they're trying to make sure everybody else is going to be okay, knowing that I'm about to be gone if I were to take my life, right?
A lot of times people say when people have a plan and the date is approaching, they become elated because they know they're going to be okay soon in their eyes. So they may seem very upbeat, very happy, but signs you can look for, are they giving their items away? Are they taking risky behaviors? Things like that are key warning signs that they have made a plan or are about to take action.
I think you hit it. The key signs, giving away stuff, super happy, no care in the world, just free living, right? And that's what we really need to watch out for. So we just talked about family and trying to open up more. So is that incorporated into J&E at all? Trying to have those conversations and education, not with just the members, but with the family. Do y'all invite them out and have family sessions, or how does that work?
Invite all family members to our groups. Our online group, we have parents in there. We invite all of our parents to come. Only some do, especially with our people who are newly diagnosed. That's a hard battle for everyone involved. When you get diagnosed with something like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or bipolar disorder, that typically happens after 18 years old. So it's a grieving process for the entire family. So we want everyone to be invited and included.
Absolutely. I think, again, you can't say enough. It's the support system. It's the family around you. If everybody is educated on what you're going through. So let's say this: if my wife is just as educated as I am about my issues and what I'm dealing with, that's a second set of eyes watching out for me. And if I share that with my friends, they all know exactly what I'm going through, what to look for. They'll know when my attitude changes, and they'll ask me. My wife will ask me, "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" And I get tired of it sometimes, right? But I know deep down that she asked because she cares. And that's what I think we all need to do is don't just stop at the, "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "All right, well, let's go about our day." Sit down, ask them face to face without distractions. "Are you okay?" Right?
And be transparent with your support network. I wasn't, and it almost took my life. And today, if I have any kind of symptom, I am quick, fast, and ready to get on that phone. I'm going to call my husband. I'm going to call my sister-in-law. I'm going to call my therapist and my doctor, and I'm going to alert them because these things can snowball. And it's about having those honest conversations. You know, I know with the stigma, sometimes we feel shame or guilt about what we're going through, but there is no shame in any of this.
Absolutely. So there's that homework for everybody checking in and just now listening, or you're following through the whole show. Make you a phone tree. Make you a checkoff list. If you're ever to that point of you can't handle this anymore, call those 5 people, and I guarantee you by the time you get done with all 5 people, you're not going to want to do that anymore. Because by then you're going to realize that there are people out there that care about you. There are people there for you and willing to talk to you, and they're going to be there to support you. Maddie, it's been great talking with you. I think you've opened up a lot of eyes to a lot of different things. I, again, commend you for still being here today to share your story and helping people out there. I want to give you just a couple quick minutes to say what you want to say, either about what you're going through or your support group or your final message to the people.
Well, what I always like to say is that mental illness is not a death sentence. We do recover and hope is alive. You know, days might seem dark now, but just remember that your life is important. Your life matters. And if you need to hear that tomorrow, email me because I sure will tell you. My email address is on my website, and I'm happy to be a listening ear for anybody who needs it. And also, I also like to say kindness is free. It takes us very little effort to give a smile, a kind word, a random act of kindness. And for you, it might be a passing moment, but we truly never know what someone is going through. And it can be a life-saving moment for somebody else.
Awesome. Y'all heard her. Email her, the website, jesupport.org. You can find her on there or one of the other helpers. I know that I've talked to both these ladies. They'll be happy to help you out, talk to you, even if you just need a kind word. And you heard it from Maddie. Kind words, a smile will go a long way. Maddie, I thank you again. I know I'll be talking to you in the future. Stick around for a couple of minutes and I'll catch up with you. But thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody who listened.
All right, y'all. You heard it here today. Full speed ahead after battle. We had Maddie Andrews from J&E Support Group. She is the founder there. Not only is she a founder of a support group that helps a lot of people with mental illness, she is a person living with severe mental illness, and she is open about it. And I think that's the message for today is we need to be open about this topic. Suicide, mental illness is not something that we need to be shying away from. This is something that needs to be on the forefront of discussions, especially when it comes to helping our veterans. Again, it's September 22nd. I need all my battle buddies to check in by the end of the day. Find me on my page, Joshua McCabe, or you can find me on the Full Speed Ahead webpage, YouTube. Find me on Josh McCabe 817, Instagram. One of the other pages, text me, email me, whatever you got to do. Check in so that I know you're still there. You see I'm here. And that's going to be the end of the show today. And don't forget, you're not in this fight alone. Reach out now.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, Be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.